I want to talk very briefly about a leadership issue that I am positive I'm going to come back around to, and we're going to look at it from a different aspect or a different side of it later on. But the idea of, as a leader, I need to take care of stuff. If there's a conflict, I need to resolve it quickly. If there's something that I've been avoiding, I need to take action. I'm not denying any of that. That those are great things, But here's the thing, sometimes it's a lot more messy than that, and sometimes it takes more time than that. Sometimes you might want to just quickly resolve the issue and move on, but sometimes the issue itself is something that takes a long time. And then there's also the issue that there's a right way to do something, and there's also a right time to do something. And sometimes an issue will just resolve itself. And then sometimes what you need to do is literally nothing. Sometimes we have to micromanage everything, and so we just end up making problems worse. Leadership is a very difficult thing, but when you act from your insecurity and you rush to conclusion and you judge a person and there's no conversation, no dialogue, you're not talking to them, you're not asking for clarity. Well, you could have told me. Well, you could have asked. And when there's not that attempt to make an effort. Oh, well, I've done it in the past. Well, I mean, yeah, maybe you have, but don't forget that people forget and people change, and you really have to, as a leader, you have to take these things into account. You have to give everybody else the benefit of the doubt, even though nobody else is going to give you the benefit of the doubt. As a leader, people are going to judge you for everything, and they're going to condemn you for everything, and everything you do will be wrong. It will be wrong. So the question is, are you going to treat people how they are treating you, or how you want them to treat you? Are you going to be an example, or are you going to be a victim? Well, I think when we look at the life of Jesus and those kinds of things, I think that we kind of get our answer. And sometimes we have to kind of be dominating with stuff, and that's not a good thing. You should be able to trust other people with stuff, and I'm not really even talking about that. But sometimes in our conflict resolution, we kind of turn into control freaks. It has to be done my way, my time, quickly, and we just kind of go into these auto modes. We already decide who is right and who is wrong, what they need to do, all this stuff. And even when they're talking, we're not really listening. We already have it figured out anyways of how they need to change. But sometimes when we try and rush something to fix it too quickly, we actually force a conflict. See, because there's sometimes when there's maybe there's a little bit of tension that just kind of resolves on its own. Here's a good example. I actually have a few people that I know who go through emotional or spiritual highs. They get real down in the dumps, and then they're up here on the mountaintop, and I mean they've talked to God Himself basically, and then they go back and forth and back and forth. Now that's just something that they deal with. I have things that I deal with. They have things that they deal with. So here's the thing. Am I going to waste my time and energy and destroy their enthusiasm by forcing a conflict rather than just waiting for a more opportune time? Here's a good example. If somebody is on a mountaintop experience, they're super spiritual, everybody else is just doesn't see things as clearly as they do. They're super close. They're homeboys with God, whatever. Well, then in a week or two, they're going to come down off that high. And if you had said something, you would have just torn them down. And then when they come off that high, they would have been in the dumps. It would have ruined your leadership, your influence with them. It would have ruined your voice with them. It would have potentially ruined ministry that they would have gone into in the future. And these are just things as a leader that you really have to take them into account. And obviously you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to do everything right, but still, when you're resolving conflicts, sometimes the answer is no, don't do anything. And that's really what I want to get across. As a good example, I hope that they don't mind me using this as an example. I didn't ask, so I hope that they don't. But there was a person on my worship team who just kind of stopped coming. It didn't tell me that they were going to stop coming. There's no communication that so I just they're not here. And then as the weeks, are they going to be here this week? I don't know. Even to the point of sometimes having to ask other people, are they coming today? So now, as a leader, you might stop right there and say, well, they wouldn't be in that position anymore. I understand where you're coming from. Really, I do. But that's kind of what I'm talking about, the micromanaging with conflict resolution. You might say, I'm not micromanaging, I'm taking care of it. Okay, all right, hold on. Let me explain, okay? People have their own problems in their own lives. You can't go in there guns a-blazing, expect everybody to have perfection all the time, to do everything perfect all the time, to never have a life and never have a problem or, anything like that. They just had to be robots, programmed to always be faithful to me. And if they ever do anything that makes me feel insecure, see what I mean? It's more based off our own insecurity rather than what's best for them, trying to help them. So what did I do? Well, actually, I did nothing. And I got a little bit irritated, and there was a time when I was going to say, you know what, I'm just going to go tell them, in the future, it would be nice to know. Well, here's the thing. Even if I would have said it in a nice way, hey, maybe you could just shoot me a text. First off, they probably would have taken it in a bad way anyways. And then second off, it really wasn't something that needed to be said, and I'll explain why. Okay, let me go through this. Now, hold on. I know your leadership, your all the things you read in leadership books is just buzzing. Maybe the classes that you took, but experience is a lot different than leadership. And I'm not saying you should ignore your problems and never answer anything, but as a leader, you have to be sensitive to when something needs to be addressed and when it doesn't. In fact, there's a rule that I think Ross has in his book, Donald Ross or something like that, about counting to 3, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days before you say something, and maybe even longer if you're still irritated. But so I wasn't really mad that long. I was upset for like 5 minutes, and then I was like, wait, I'm kind of being a little bit ridiculous. And let me explain to you why I was being a little bit ridiculous and why my irritation was not warranted. First off, they got sick. They started missing because they got sick. They were in massive amounts of pain. As a leader, do you think that you should take that kind of stuff into account? Or should it just be by the books? Well, when you're not going to come, you need to let me know. Yeah, okay, all right. I get what you're saying. Really, I do. But I think that idea is wrong. I think that sometimes leaders get this idea based on being a control freak, not on actually leading well. And then they were dealing with other life conflicts. So if I would have entered the problem and created another conflict, do you think that would have gone well for me, them, the ministry, the church? Do you think that would have gone well? See, sometimes you have to, as a leader, you have to stand your ground, and then sometimes you have to say, no, this is picking a fight. This is looking for a fight. This is something that doesn't have to be a fight, that I am turning into a fight because of my poor leadership. Yeah, there are times when you need to stand your ground and, the faith needs to be strong, but there's sometimes when it's like, yeah, what about that being humble and kind and gentle? What about those things? Oh, well, it's sometimes we latch onto parts of Scripture that we really like, oh, you need to just take authority, and you need to just, rebuke them, and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it's just kind of a waste of your time, and you're just causing them harm. When you say, here's the thing, you can never say and give enough compliments to people under you, and to people who you are, not under you, but I mean who you are in authority over. But you'd be surprised how far one correction can go. And so really when you're disciplining people, remember that a little bit of the bad goes a long way, and a lot of the good doesn't go very far at all. So take this into account. Yes, deal with the situations you have to, but maybe be wise about it. Also, this person is someone who's typically faithful. Typically, in fact, I'll say this, before they got sick with that, they had a different health condition, which still hasn't worked completely out. But they were there week after week after week in enormous amounts of pain. So shouldn't you take the past into account when you're making see what I mean? Past is prologue. I mean, you really have to stop and think about these kinds of things. So then, I could have said something like this. They just have an authority problem that they need to get over. I have to address this issue. And maybe they do have an authority problem. Maybe they have an attitude problem. Maybe there's an issue there that I need to address. I don't know. But here's the thing that I do know. That people oftentimes, you have to trust that God is working in them. And you have to trust that micromanaging isn't the best leadership tactic. And then you also have to take into account that sometimes it's just irritating to you, and you rush to a conclusion that you might be wrong. I know it's hard as a leader sometimes to admit that, but sometimes you're going to be wrong. Your attitude's going to be wrong. Your analysis of the situation is going to be wrong. And you're going to sit up worrying all night about something that you're creating a problem in your own mind. Ministry is stressful enough, and there's a lot of problems, but don't make more problems where they aren't there. But good leadership is being the best you can be. Loving people and serving people. That's good leadership. Maybe there's a point where too much grace is given. I don't know, maybe. But as a leader, my primary purpose is to be an example, to love, to serve, to guide them, and to keep encouraging them. Man, I remember when I first got into ministry, the thing that God laid on my heart so strong. You're here for two things. Well, actually, I'm just simplifying here. Help the pastor to do his job. Make sure that no matter what, he doesn't quit. Second thing, encourage. Just keep encouraging people. Be like a river. Keep flowing. Keep flowing out that encouragement. And that has been my guiding star throughout all of my time in ministry. My job number one is making sure that pastor does not quit. Job number two, I try to encourage. And every time I stray from that and get into other areas, it doesn't end well. God has more for us than just looking for things to complain about and nag and cry. Don't be a home inspector. Don't walk into something and say, okay, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Go into a room and find the good. Even in a bad situation, find the good. I'm having a conflict with this person. Yeah, but what about all those years that you had a good time? Well, those are gone now. Maybe, but still you can appreciate them. And then sometimes they're just misunderstandings and stuff like that. Sometimes people think that they did something that they didn't do, and there's just a lot of different things to take into account. Just because that's how you think doesn't mean that that's how they're thinking, and I think that that's something that as leaders we oftentimes forget. Everybody thinks like me, everybody feels like me. It's like naivete. Because we're honest, we just assume that everybody else is going to be honest. You have to take people and situations into account with any time that you are, addressing a conflict. That's what it comes down to. Maybe they just don't know. Here's something to think about. Maybe the person who didn't let me know and didn't show up, maybe they just aren't on edge around me. Maybe they didn't think about telling me, or maybe they already thought that they did tell me, but because they had other things, they trusted that I would make a big issue out of something that wasn't a big issue. Now, if I would have gone on their guns a-blazing, their opinion of me would have changed. Now, I know that you can't just try to please people. Yeah, I know that. But you also don't have to try and tick them off. Just throwing that out there. So I hope that was valuable to you. Don't ever give up, guys. Keep going.